Hey, what's up guys? So tonight I'm going to be working on the front subframe again, part 3. Hopefully there'll only be part 4. But tonight we're going to be putting the bar across. We're going to be finishing welding up the other side and start talking about the traction bars and what they do, how to set them up on this thing, and why you would put them on a front wheel drive car. So stay tuned for this video, keep watching. Alright, so tonight I'm going to start with welding the other gusset plate on. I ended up taking this piece off of the first one until I get the bar across the front. So let me weld up the other one and then we'll bolt this in the car and see what we got. Me and Dakota are back, day 2. So I got these mounted up. This one I just have hanging. So one thing I did forget is I need to plasma cut little spacers for the indents that are on the frame rail. So I'm going to do that. But also while I'm doing that, we're going to cut the bar to go across, get it all welded in, tack the other side up, and then go through what my traction bars will look like. Dakota has to learn. Well, Dakota's going to see if he can remember how to run my plasma. So I'm going to give him a bunch of files. I'm going to give him the camera and send him over there while I'm doing the rest of the stuff.
Should be interesting.
So we'll see what happens. Alright, so we got all the brackets done. These are the brackets for the traction bar. These are the washers. These are the second brackets for the traction bar. So now I'm going to pass the torch to Dakota.
Let's go fuck some shit up.
See what he can do. I'm going to cut the bar for across the front while he's doing that. He'll come back, weld it in, put everything in, and see what we got.
Alright, let's see if we can figure out how this works. Alright, now that those are done, let's bring it over to the plasma table.
Dakota's still working on cutting these out. He actually figured it out after only using it once, so not bad. So, the first pieces he cut me out with these little washers. What they do is they fit in those areas, so this piece will have a solid base. So I'm going to get these bolted in. I have the tube cut. I'm going to stick it in, and then we're going to lay out all the traction bars, and I'm also going to make this piece for the mount. I probably won't get to weld it tonight, but I want to get everything mocked up. So the bar's in. Once I'm done, I'll bring my welder over, weld the second piece on. All the gussets, I'll have them tacked on. But for now, I want to make sure the motor is where I want it before I measure up for the piece of the motor mount, and then we'll talk traction. Alright, so I got the motor where I want it. I measured where this is in relation to that, and I'll go draw it up, have Dakota cut the last piece. All right, so I got my front mount all drawn up. I'm gonna cut it out on the plasma. We'll get it in, get everything bolted through, and then we'll move on to the next step of mounting all the traction stuff. All right, so one thing before we go next door to the CNC room is these are the traction bar mounts, and I'm going to bend them on a slight angle, and you will see why that I do it when I mount everything. So I'm gonna put on time lapse, and you can see what I'm doing. So I got these bent. You can see they have a slight angle to them, and you'll see why when we get over there. They're at different parts of the hole. So we got one side of the motor mount done. Dakota's cutting out the other one. Dakota's cutting out the other one right now. We're gonna start talking about this. These are my traction bar mounts for the subframe. I also have the brackets bent on an angle so I can get the correct geometry. So you don't want to have the bracket straight and then be on the high misalignment spacers like that. So when this thing moves, it's always like that. Yes, it's fine for a little bit, but you don't want to set the car up like that. So once I get the other bracket done, I'll put this in, and then we'll talk about how I'm gonna set this up. All right, so we're almost done for the night. I'm not gonna get to weld this up tonight, but I'm gonna go over what happened tonight. So we did the front motor mount. I don't wanna weld any of this in until I get the correct bolts and spacers. Missing the bolts for this. I don't have the right size. I need to get a new bolt for this. I just have an extension through it right now to hold it. I still gotta make all the gusset plates that hold this together. And outside on this piece, I'm gonna make a reinforcement out of 1/8 inch steel so this doesn't rip off. It probably won't, but because I needed the room here, perfectly, this should be right around here. The problem is that there's a lot more leverage on this mount now that it's sticking out, but I need this room. There's so much shit going through here that I have to have this room, have to have this out like this. So it is what it is. You got to make the best of what you got. When you're fitting some shit like this in here, you got to do what you got to do. All right, so traction. Let's get into this a little bit. So a lot of you know, as a Mark II driver, when you take off, if you have big power, you'll start getting wheel hop. When you take off, what's happening is the bushing in the back and the front are allowing the tire to get traction, break free, get traction, break free. And what's happening is the wheel's oscillating because of the A-arm. There's a couple ways that people try to get around this. So first thing is people will do poly bushings. What that does is, yes, it eliminates some of it, but it also makes your suspension bind. It will not let it go through full travel unless it's forced up. So a lot of people on air will notice that they can't get the car to level out all the way on poly bushings. So what they do is they'll do a half and half, a hybrid. They'll do the TT rear and the poly front bushing is what I have. So with the hybrid bushings, it is better than stock, but what you do get is you still get the wheel hop once you start upping your horsepower. So on my car, I started noticing it once I hit over 280 wheel. So this thing should be right around just under 400 wheel horsepower when it's done. With projected boost and what this is capable of, it should be right around there. So this thing is going to have a traction problem, and I'm trying to resolve that as much as possible right now. So let's go over the traction bars right now. So these are my mounts. They have 3 spots for adjustment depending on where my ride height is. One thing I will tell you, if you're gonna weld brackets like this, to always put a shim in here. That is about 20 thousandths, normally 15 to 20 thousandths. Otherwise, when you weld it, it'll close up and you'll never fit the heim joint in there. So, the next thing we're gonna talk about is placement of the bar. So the first thing you gotta know is your ride height of the car. So my car is close right now to ride height. It's gonna be a little lower, but I'm not gonna weld the pieces on the control arms yet. I'm just gonna get them kinda lined up and I'll do the fine tuning on that side. The other thing to have is adjustability. If you see my brackets, there are 3 positions, low, medium, high. They are also not straight. These are on an arc of the length of the bar. So if you wanted to change position at the track, all you have to do is pull the bolt out, slide it up, and you have a new position. So the next thing is length of the bar. I can go to the front of the A-arm, I can go to the back of the A-arm. When I go to the back of the A-arm, my bar is now longer, which makes the rate of change as that bar moves, the distance that's gonna pull in and out less. So the difference between having a short bar and a long bar are huge. The longest bar you can get in here, the better the car is gonna react to the traction bars. I know everybody's gonna say, well, you're losing pull force because you're going from the back. No, you're not. When my bracket goes around it, it will be pulling and supporting the whole control arm. So the next thing I'm gonna do is angle. So some things you can change on this to get a little more suspension travel without doing anything crazy is to try to move this bar on the same plane as your subframe bolt. Now the angle of the bar goes into the control arm, makes a huge difference. If you hear me say rate of change, what I'm talking about is how much pull and push the bar. So as this bar goes up and down, it moves on an arc. So the longer the bar is, there's gonna be less of a movement because the bar is longer. So with a shorter bar, you are gonna get more pulling forces. So actually with this bar being the G60 one, or the Twin G60 one being moved forward, I'm getting a longer bar. So I'm getting a better setup for this car. So the next thing is, where do you put this traction bar? Do you want to go all the way out to the end? No, what that's going to stop you is from turning your wheel. Do you want to go close to this joint? Nope, because that's not going to allow you to apply any force and stabilization to this control arm. So you got to find middle ground. What I find, and this is just on a VW, it may be different for a Honda, it may be different for anything else. So in the front, you have your triple adjustable bracket. So these are set up to be level. And if you notice, the brackets are bent towards where they're going. So the heim joint is riding in the middle. It's not riding on its high misalignment spacers. So really you want this set up pretty much lined up with your subframe bolt. And then this bar will be out about 1 inch over from where your sway bar bolts on. The big thing that you want to look for is that you don't hit the tranny. If you notice right now, the bar is too far in. If I zoom in, you can see the sway bar hole. So like I said, this ends up being about 1 inch away from the center of that. And if you look now, there's plenty of room by the transmission. So I did get a lot done today, thanks to Dakota, because he came down, ran the parts while I was doing other stuff. So I'll make the gussets for this. I'll make the piece to hold the radiator support. I'm probably gonna put a couple little tabs off of here so I can mount the intercooler pipes too and shit like that. I also have to put my radiator in here, so once I get this pretty much welded in, I'll start putting the bumper on so I can fit everything else. So again, if anybody has any questions or they want anything else answered, please put it in the comments and I'll answer it on the next video. There'll only be one more video for the subframe. So we'll also be moving on to mounting the supercharger bracket to the motor. I have a 2-liter crossflow motor, so I can do it outside the car instead of trying to do it inside the car and fuck up the paint on this thing. So hey, again, thank you for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe if you like what me and Dakota are doing.